I got injured when I was serving in the military. Half of my body was paralyzed. I come back home and the only people I have to rely on are my mom and my wife. Well, one of those people fall through and it wasn't my mom. I found out that my wife is cheating on me, and she was actually giving me way more medicine than I needed just so I didn't know what was going on around me. But the story gets even worse, because when I tell you the guy that she cheated on me with, what he did to me when I was asleep, well, let me just tell you. My story begins with a dream. A dream to be able to do the right thing and serve my country in the best way I could. While many are forced into military service, I say those are the first to fall. It must be a matter of will, and I feel that it's just a magic word in all this text. Will. The will to go on, to continue, to not give up, and to persist, even when the road becomes the darkest thing in your world. Being in the combat zone is not for the weak, and I proved it when many of my comrades, who preferred to be anywhere else but there, ended KIA, thinking about how I should hand over the uniforms and flags to their wives, thinking about how I should, well, wonder if they did not have their wives to motivate them to go home safe and sound. At least for me, that was my case. My wife was my biggest reason to return, as it gave me a sense of victory to see her again and have her stroke my hair, like when we were young. She was actually the last thing I remembered when I had the accident. I don't remember very well what happened because everything happened so fast, and before I knew it, I had a light brighter than the sun above me. And I had to try to get up to run, but I couldn't, because I could not feel half of my body. I was rescued and taken in a catatonic state to the nearest hospital, where I was told I remained in a coma for at least 3 weeks. It sounds crazy, but I remember a bit of the whole thing. Sure, I was unconscious most of the time, but at times it felt like you were sleeping and just dreaming, but then there came a bitter moment where I wanted to wake up and couldn't. They took care of me as best as they could during that period, and when I was finally able to open my eyes, everyone felt like it was just a patriotic date. Of course, not everything was rosy in the story, because only my left side was the one that could, quote, wake up as such. The right side remained immobile. As far as I knew, it was because of severe spinal cord damage, which had such a big impact that it rendered my right side basically useless. I admit that I panicked at first. I did, as the sensation was quite strong and very unpleasant to look at. I would look in the mirror and see half my body remained melted, unable to articulate the simplest movements well. Everything had to rely on my left side. And the worst thing is that I'm not left-handed, so it would be quite complicated to handle. I was on the local news, and many people heard about my case, considering me a hero for at least coming back alive. Mind you, it was quite a blow to my family. I still remember coming home to my wife hugging me, and forgiving her because she was hurting me. I told her she was only hurting my left side, as it was to try to get a smile out of her. But it didn't work. There were a lot of tears, but I could not even cry from my left side, and that's when the daily grind began, where my life, and therefore everyone around me, became a little more complicated. It was when I learned that my condition was called Hemiplegia, and it causes paralysis in various parts of my body. In my case, it was the right section. Not being able to use my hands, arms, feet, legs, and even half of my face looked a bit dull in front of the other. I was frustrated that I could not even open my eye fully. The doctors told me that with a little help and treatment, I would be able to recover the motor skills of my body in just a couple of years. Of course, only for my abdomen to be able to turn at will, this being the least used movement by man, I realized. But the damage was basically irreparable. To this we add the pains I received due to combat issues, small spaces of time where I had fainted or with a lot of weakness. Curiously, to prevent that, I had to take sedatives that put me to sleep for an eternity. You may be wondering how I'm writing this. Well, it is with the help of my sister. She's the one who transcribes everything for me. sometimes after recordings that I make for her to transform into text. I tried writing one-handed on the computer, and even the first paragraph was written entirely by me. But it took way too long, and I just decided to put it aside. And of course, doing it by hand was out of the question from the beginning. I wanted to leave a record of my step-by-step through this process. At least I have loved one by my side, being able to help me weigh the matter more. I was given several decorations in the military for my outstanding work, although, if I'm honest, I don't feel I deserve them. Although I can say that I have the joy of having survived, and that's something I can't, help but be thankful for. In terms of care, I'm mostly taken care of by my wife and sister, although other family members also come to visit me from time to time, at least twice every 2 or 3 weeks. My family lives a bit apart, so it's a bit complicated. What hurts me the most is the fact that many have begun to feel somewhat depressed about my situation, even more than I do. I have a little niece who won't let me see her because she might be overly impressed, and that breaks my heart. My wife is devastated too. This happened a month ago, that is, I've been in bed at home for a month now. And the few times I've been able to move around, kind of freely, have been with the help of my relatives. It's a little embarrassing to go to the bathroom or have your new diapers changed, and my wife says that at least she has managed to reduce a little and train her arms more by having to grab me and carry me to different places. We're looking at some sites where they make donations and offer robotic equipment for people of my condition. Of course, they're very, very expensive, and usually, when you see them on social network, it's because some eccentric millionaire is donating them. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's worth dreaming, right? I'm afraid of how my life is going to change from now on, because I've never liked to be a burden to others. I was about to give my life for a country and then just be dead weight? No, thank you. I prefer anything else than this. As time progresses, I'll post more updates, but don't worry, because this warrior has not yet been defeated, or at least, that's what I want to believe. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story is a rather sad one, but don't worry, things might just turn around. There's a few updates to get through, 4 updates in fact, and if you guys are new to the channel and you want daily videos, go ahead, subscribe. Here is update number 1. I haven't been feeling very well lately. I feel too weak during my recovery, and to make matters worse, my sister sometimes has to go home to attend to other business. I'm writing this part on my own before posting, as I don't want her to see it. I appreciate what she does, and I hope one day to be able to repay her kindness. She, to be honest, helps me a little more than my wife because she's more present in the house. My wife tries to spend her time buying things and just helping to make meals and cleaning. Well, it's not like she doesn't spend time in the house, but she doesn't spend time in the bedroom with me. We even started sleeping in separate rooms recently, since she tends to move around a lot when she sleeps, and that can hurt me. When we slept together before this, she used to almost throw me out of bed. Yes, she can be that rough when she's asleep. And nowadays, if she does that, there can be a major problem. Not to complain, but I feel a bit of disdain for her. My sister might be there a couple times a week, but otherwise it's my wife who has to look after me. I'm like a newborn baby because I can't even sit up by myself. Once I tried it and ended up lying on top of my left arm. Had it not been for my sister who was nearby, I would have possibly cut off my circulation. That's when I understood true panic. And speaking of panic, I know it'll sound a little silly, but one of my less favorite parts of the day is meals. I now have to eat only porridge, as solid food could be absolutely chaos. They had to help me chew, as I rely heavily on my right side to be able to open and close my mouth. This also complicates things like speech, so I ended up talking like one of those cowboys in an old Western movie, who seem to talk with their lips glued together. The other day, I looked in the mirror and did not like what I saw. My wife stood next to me and started stroking my hair like she used to, but I, honestly, could not manage to feel it. I could not even give a full smile, only a half-melted face, and that made me feel inadequate of her. I wanted to stay positive, but I guess this is one of those moments where the hero seems to be on his last leg and sees no light at the end of the tunnel. I can only hope for better days, but until then, I'll just have to keep sucking in half a mouthful of my vegetable cream. Update number 2. Things went off the rails in a way that I can't really explain. I'm too embarrassed to have to explain all this with my sister at the keyboard, but it's only fair to have to do so. I would not leave you in doubt, and I want to raise awareness for people who might be in a similar situation. And, well, people who need to be taken care of as soon as possible by those who are willing to help. My mind and body are bad, very bad, and I'm having a hard time sorting out ideas. But the oldest memory I have is from a few months ago when I was in the middle of one of my painkiller blackouts. The memory is fuzzy, but I know I was on an empty stomach. I may not move, but I can still feel certain spasms in my body. Anyways, my gut was growling, and I could feel the sun slowly going down, and I have to take my meals at a very specific time. And they don't usually fall quite right when the sun goes down, as my body is very relaxed, and I end up having accidents in bed. I know that sounds like an embarrassing thing to say, but it's to make a point. Anyways, I spent quite a while with an empty stomach. My sister was at her home, and I tried to call my wife for food, but she never came. Right now, I can say with confidence that she never came because, well, for a long period, she's assured me that she had come by the room to give me my soup, which was a lie. I spent long periods like that, periods when I did not eat at the prescribed times, having great moments of involuntary fasting. In itself, I'm not ingesting everything that a normal person needs. In this case, everything becomes worse. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because the worst is yet to come. It turns out that my wife was involved in some very unpleasant actions, and my sister helped me process all this information. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened to me. Apparently, she had been having an affair with another man for some time, and this could be, well, just another story of infidelity, but it does not end there. It goes much further. Much further. Much further. To the point of saying that I don't know if I can even get over this for the rest of my life. How did we go from an empty stomach to this? Well, it turns out that a few months ago, about 3, I started to have some improvement in my condition. Not much, just a little bit in certain areas, and I have to massage or let them massage various parts to get circulation going, and the skin and muscles not rot. Anyways, I started to have improvement, like I said, where I could move a little bit of my lips and my right shoulder. But not too much, but it was real progress to me. It was something that could be considered miraculous. But as it started, they disappeared instantly. There were moments where I took 1 step forward and I took 2 steps back, and that began to generate in me an immense depression. At one point, I even considered hurting myself. But even for that, I was going to need assistance. I'm a little ashamed to admit it, unlike my wife, who was not ashamed to kill me slowly. It turns out that she was the cause of my discomforts, and she's purposely avoided giving me my meals and attention at regular times. She would give me heavy meals to digest, leaving me without bathing for at least 2 or 3 days, and would double the dose of painkillers so that I would end up more tired even after sleep. And this was only in the moments when I saw her, because there were long periods where it was just me, my thoughts, and these walls. She could leave around noon or a little earlier and end up arriving at night as if nothing happened at all. Of course, I would not say anything because I was super sedative, drunk as a skunk, and would call my wife for help finding the door locked. This went on for months, and I mean months, during which time my sister did not understand why I had deteriorated so much if I had made so much progress before. It was then that she asked me if everything was going well with my wife. It was then that I realized, because I never realized it before, all the abuse that she was doing. I remember that I even had sores on my skin as a result of not moving my body enough, or at least that's what I thought. My sister started noticing all these things, and she would just ask my wife what was going on, because it was not normal for someone who was improving to regress so abruptly. That's why my sister decided to take very drastic measures. It was something we spent weeks thinking about. And it would involve using some money from reserves that she had saved for an emergency that might arise. But she was so darn suspicious of it that we did not care and decided to move forward with the project. We put security cameras inside the house, call it a woman's instinct, but my sister had something in her head that told her things were happening under my roof. Our conflicts arose precisely because I said that nothing was happening, and she told me that if something was happening, I might as well let myself go and see if I finally managed to die. Since I had no reason to stay alive anymore, being always bedridden being a great torture. After much tugging and pulling, she decided to do it. Spy cameras installed in the living room, the front door, the kitchen, and my room, you name it. These would tell us if anything was wrong, and at first, it did not pick up anything, but within days, the inevitable happened. My wife cheated on me with a mastodon who did have use for every part of his body, unlike me, who was just a harmless burden. We watched as they both came home and went about their business as if nothing was wrong with the whole facade, as if she did not have a catatonic husband who's starving to death right next door. I admit that I heard strange noises near a house for a long time, but I used to confuse them with birds, cars, or the same sound of nature, so I went into a depressive process after finding out everything. The worst part is, there were times when they were not only doing things in the house, but they were doing it next to me. That's right. Just as you read it, there were at least 5 occasions where my wife would sedate me and they would do their crazy stuff right on the bed where I was lying. It was human baseness that knew no bounds. My sister almost threw up when she saw the video, as it was too strong to be true. I mean, a man who sacrificed his life for his country was now the laughingstock of his own home. All this being recorded right now just to have a record of what happened as we plan to take this case to the police. My condition does not allow me to transport myself freely, so we have to make an excuse to get me out of the house, as I don't want to be alone with that woman. We were reflecting, and if we had continued the situation, I could have well died in the middle of a coma from medication. I think the worst part of all that is, as I mentioned, I had started to get sores all over my body, and we didn't know what they were coming from. After watching the videos, we realized that there were nothing more or less than cigarette burns, which my wife's lover left on me, thinking that I had my mind elsewhere and that because of my condition I would not notice the pain. There was so much evil in everything that they did, and they looked like a movie villain. Watching a dying man on his last leg while they just went about continuing their lewd pleasure. Until now, we've kept everything under wraps so as not to flaunt this, and we're even tempted to make a plan to surprise the two of them with the police at the door. But after watching the video recordings, we realized that their abuse of me was getting worse, and we don't want to risk the next time being the last time. This has made me apathetic, crestfallen, and less willing to do anything, even getting the justice I deserve. I don't know how to cope in the future, and I'm afraid that any progress I may have made during all these months have been in vain because of the person to whom I dedicated my victories and defeats with. And it just goes to show that you can't trust even your better half. Update number 3. First of all, I want to apologize for all the time it's taken me to write this. It's my new update, and I've seen that some people have written me to know what happened with my situation, but the matter progressed. I felt I had to do a special thing, so this is the first time I did a text this long on my own, and well, writing with only one hand has never been an easy task. task, I end up twice as tired, and it takes me 3 times as long. However, I'm not that bad at it and tend to take it as a hobby, which is great, because as you know, I have a lot of free time. Now, I'll update my drama. This is what happened. We took the case to the police with all the evidence possible, and it was not long before the trial started. It was a pretty touchy subject because of an inconvenience that occurred, something I'm not very proud of. It turns out that when my ex-wife and her lover were amid consummation, or even I think it was days before, she has taken advantage of my zombie-like state to be able to ask me if she could date other people, to which I responded yes. Of course, this was before even putting up the security cameras, but she would claim that I gave her permission, and obviously I would say yes to anything in that state, but none of that made up the stories and series of physical abuse they also did to me, like cigarette burns or minor cuts they did, just the parts I don't feel. The best thing is that I have my body as evidence, and that makes me think that they were not very smart in doing this kind of thing. That's when the boom started of the media, with people feeling outraged about how an ex-soldier, a person who deserves respect, was going through such a tragic situation in his own home, and all for the sheer fact of not being able to face reality. My wife said something during the trial that made me think a lot, and made me think of the person I married, and I quote, "When I got married, I dreamt of a peaceful life, full of children, a loving husband, but the war took that away from me. Not only could I do nothing about it, but I had to sacrifice my freedom too. No, not even to make someone else happy, so that someone else would survive in the most pathetic way possible." He then began to condemn the country's actions for not giving a darn about abandoning its soldiers once they were no longer useful to them. This began to generate debates around the city and took the focus away from what happened to me to what is now considered a more acute problem. Right? So, it was as if I had been left out of the eye of the hurricane, and for me, all the better. One of the things that I panic about the most was being the center of attention for something like that. I wanted to be as inconspicuous as possible, although my condition, I can't always have the last word. Update number 4. Okay, I was not planning on writing this update, and it was my sister who insisted that I should. She's behind the keyboard again and reading my last writing. The trials are over, and the outcome was quite satisfactory. At first, my ex-wife tried every possible way to bring me down, going to the extremes of turning her family against me, saying that I was an abuser and that my going to the army was just an excuse to get away with it. If you see my first entry yourselves, you're going to realize my true motives for doing everything I did, but I had several pieces of evidence that showed otherwise, so the whole game started to be played against her. Several people testified on my behalf, and along with the recording, she had something tied around my neck. Although my body sometimes healed the wounds, well, there was still bodily evidence that indicated physical abuse on part of her and her lover. Moreover, upon further investigation, my body was deteriorating in an almost alarming manner due to lack of care. Only my sister was the one who cared for me now, and if only one more month had passed, I would not be alive to tell you this story. When I heard what the verdict was, I almost jumped off my gurney to celebrate, or, well, if I could, I would. But now that I think about it, I don't think it's entirely fair. It was 6 years in prison for my ex-wife. For physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, 6 years. But for her partner, the story's different. He managed to pay for a very good lawyer, which helped him to basically get away with the whole thing. And I say basically because he only managed to avoid jail time but had to pay me some money. Well, if my ex-wife's verdict was going to make me jump for joy, this one made me scream as loud as I could. He would have to give me a pretty hefty compensation for the damages received, and just to put it into a little bit of perspective for you, it's the equivalent of being able to pay for at least 10 years of treatment. In fact, that's what we're going to use the money for. For that, and to pay for psychological therapy for everything that I've been through, and even for at least a couple years of medical care. We're going to be able to afford a personal nurse. I feel it's fate, even worse than prison. The guy went bankrupt after this, and now he and my ex-wife are in everyone's sights as the lowest life form of a human being that exists. This news reached the eyes and ears of one of those philanthropics who, after knowing everything that happened to me, decided to contribute his grain of sand, helping me with that expensive operation to see if at least a part of my body mobility could be recovered. We're currently waiting for the necessary condition for this, and yes, it's a slow process, but they said it'll be worth the try. There's a chance that I'm going to recover 30, maybe even 40% of my mobility. What I would most likely be able to do is walk, or at least speak well. Well, I've become accustomed to doing things with my left hand, and I feel that I'm already prepared for any outcome. Update number 5. This is the final update. Well, I'm going to be very brief on this update. 3 months have passed since my last entry. It has all seemed so far away now, and the operation hurt a bit. But that's a good thing because it means that my nervous system's recovering. Unfortunately, my motor skills are less than I expected, but at least I can move part of my face and my arm up into my elbow. With therapy, it might even be a little more. I'm being cared for wonderfully by the nurse and my sister, who's been with me through the whole process, and she sometimes jokes that the nurse has taken an interest in me. But I don't feel that's the case. I lost quite a bit of weight after the war. Although, I did gain a little weight after the trial session. At the moment, I'm not interested in a new romantic partner, and it's not like anyone's interested in me. Of course, there are things that are being dealt with in this psychological therapy. I've had 2 sessions so far, and we're working on things like self-esteem, trust issues, and post-traumatic stress. I'm not in my most optimistic state, but I have something that sets me apart from many others, and that's being able to surround myself by several people who actively care about me. My sister, more than anyone else, offered me to help. That not even the women I love the most could offer. To her, I dedicate this writing, and I wish the readers that they can have someone like that in their lives of my sister. Until then, we will continue to fight without giving up. It's all a matter of will. The only good thing that came out of this story was the fact that she's serving 6 years in prison, and you know what? I think she deserved more. And her lover, her secret affair partner who did the unthinkable to OP, also has to pay a massive fine. But let me know in the comment section down below, do you think that was enough? Some of the commenters on the original post were saying she deserves so much worse. But you know, I want to hear from you guys. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I post a video every single day. So if you want to help us reach our goal, we're almost at 60,000 subscribers on this channel. Smash that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. And just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.